Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to respond to the motion which basically speaks towards the establishment of a special select committee to review charges for house lots for Guyanese. That is in the name of the previous speaker, Honorable Annette Ferguson. Let me say from the onset, Mr. Speaker, this motion is quite, and if you want for a better word, confusing. In its present form, it is fundamentally flawed. This motion begins in vague speculation and then crashes to an illogical conclusion that is mind-boggling. There is no specificity in the motion, just words that spring together. And when you study what is presented, there is no basis for the conclusion that it draws. The motion makes several claims, and then it sets blames on the Ministry of Housing and Water and the Central Housing and Planning Authority, without providing evidence that any policy on our part is responsible for the, and I quote, financial constraints, unquote, that you, Honorable Member Ferguson, claims. Being allocated a lot and building a house are two distinct components for home ownership. And while the Ministry of Housing provides both house lots and, more recently, complete houses, the matter of ownership rests solely with the applicant. Mr. Speaker, as has been obtained since the formation of the CHP, and we were reminded in 1948, the primary objective has been to provide lands to eligible Guyanese for residential purposes. Since then, CHPA has evolved to provide complete houses and commercial lands. The lands provided had, at the start of the program, rudimentary infrastructure, that is, a basic road that was mostly bricks. This is in the commencement phase. Utilities had to be accessed from the individual companies by the landowner. There was no cohesion approach to developing the housing areas as obtained now. We have modified and improved the housing program of 1948. Today, we are established, well-developed, and developing housing areas, which includes the roads, bridges, drainage, electricity, water, access to potable water, green spaces, religious buildings, and even health facilities or centers. Mr. Speaker, house lot allocation, while not an exact and perfect science, is based on a few things. Namely, availability of land, the development of the land, and of course, the applicants. The categories of the lots range from low income, moderate, middle, and high. The same applies to the houses, and these are allocated based on the applicant's income, and some other factors are taken into consideration. In some cases, applicants have requested a change in their category due to extenuating circumstances and those were considered and many times facilitated. Mr. Speaker, I want to share with this House the cost for the lots according to the various categories. and I'm using from 2015 to present. The low income ranges from 92,000 to about 250,000. Moderate income from around 300 to 700. Middle income from 800 to 2 million, and high income to 2 to about 6 million. That's the average. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, the cost of a low-income lot in Region 2 or 10 would be less than that in Region 4. And this carries across the board. These prices are determined based on the infrastructure, the land size, and the market price. But it is important to remember, Mr. Speaker, that these costs are also heavily subsidized by the government. On the matter of the deposit required by the bank, the Ministry of Housing and Water have collaborated, and CHPA have collaborated with the banks to expedite applications for mortgages. And the government of Guyana had engaged the banks to lower the interest rates. In 2020, Mr. Speaker, interest rates were 4%, 5.95%, and 6.25%. Following this PPP civic government policy interventions, the rates were lowered to 3.5 and in some cases 3.2, 3.75%, and 5.7% on the high end. In 2020, the banks, and let me use New Building Society since NBS was quoted. For example, Mr. Speaker, in 2020, New Building Society received 669 applicants, and they disbursed $3.5 billion. In 2023, last year, New Building Society received over 2,500 applicants and disbursed $19 billion. In terms of applicants, a 274% increase over 3 years, and in terms of disbursement, a 443% increase on disbursed loan. That is the power of this PPPC government. Mr. Speaker, we care about the people, and we have considered the constraints that they might face. We didn't bring a motion to Parliament or ask a select committee. We knew what we had to do. The banks are now lending as much as 100% of the cost of building the house, and they are using the land as equity. In some cases, the banks also approve the land costs as part of the total loan. In 2020 and prior, Mr. Speaker, applicants had to have cash equity and the land to be considered for a loan. This has changed. Our PPPC government has made this happen. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that is, despite all of these constraints, and I uplifted commas, that the good member mentions, the demand for house lots in each category far outweighs the supply. So who are these applicants that are facing the constraints? To date, in 3.5 years, we have allocated over 33,000 house lots, prioritizing 2019 and earlier, and we have just launched an online portal. We have quadrupled the allocations made from 2015 to 2020 by the previous administration. During the initial, I'll give the figures, during the initial months of the current administration, that is from August to December 2020, and then when you take into consideration the period as of now, an analysis, because up to last week, Mr. Speaker, one who's not here, the honourable member who's not here, had an article in the newspapers speaking about discrimination, and an analysis of the allocations that have been done by this PBPC tenure has shown that the distribution that has been done by both of the majority races in this country has been equal on distribution. And so therefore, one wants to need to ask, where is the cry of discrimination? In the hinterland regions, Mr. Speaker, where one cannot acquire an individual land title because the lands in the villages is on the communal lands. So we have a hinterland housing program, and this has positively impacted indigenous families by providing homes at no cost to the beneficiary. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if I can provide the record or stewardship, currently we have a program, the first round, so we have 400 houses under this program for regions 1, 7, 8, and 9. Of these 400 houses, Mr. Speaker, 125 have been completed in Kukrit, Warapoka, Haimaruni, Letem, Yakarinta, Tiger Pond, Napi, Crashwater, Rupanau. And the remainder will be completed in the next few months. And before this year is finished, we will start on another round of hinterland houses. Compare that with the APNU tenure. 20 houses were constructed in Kako, Waramadang, Kamarang, and Kwebanang. The other hinterland houses that were done during their tenure was the completion of the IDB funded program that was left by now President and then Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable President Irfan Ali. Those were the houses that were done for the hinterland. And the last government speaks so much about loving the hinterland. Furthermore, our allocation process demonstrates a clear commitment to equitable socio-economic development. 91.8% of our allocations benefited low income, moderate income, and the middle income Guyanese. Therefore, that tells you the high income on our 33,000 allocation was only 8.2%. In fact, let me go more specific. In fact, low income allocation 43%, moderate income 30%, and middle income 18.8%. This reflects, Mr. Speaker, our goal of reducing poverty and fostering inclusive growth. Moreover, in keeping with our mandate to empower youths through home ownership, individuals aged 21 to 35 represents 52% of our allocations. The housing program has seen 45.8% of allocations going to women, 27.6% to males, and 26.6% being joint applicants. If the good member can provide, and I say that with open heart, if you have direct issues that confront you, or complaints. I, in 3.5 years, if you so care about the population, have never received a single complaint from you on behalf of anyone who is being faced with an issue. I have received from other members on the other side though. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the members of this House and the people who are listening today that the state for the housing sector under the very member who has brought this motion and the minister who preceded myself. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it was the APNU-AFC government that reduced the Ministry of Housing to a department under the Ministry of Communities. And I want to remind you about the musical chairs that saw 3 ministers within that short tenure. And the last minister, honorable member, the previous speaker, took 8 months to occupy the office when she was appointed. 8 months. Had to be all green. During their stint, Mr. Speaker, they developed, the APNUFC government developed in 2015 to 2020, developed only 3 housing schemes. And I named them: Peters Hall, Prospect Tract E, and Providence. Contrast that, Mr. Speaker, in 3.5 years, we have developed over 50 housing areas. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Member Manichan, their allocation total was 7,534 in 5 years. And they failed to develop and design schemes because what they did was all left before 2015. Despite their grand claims of securing 409 acres of land in Letem, Kwakwani, Amelia's Ward, and Wisrock for house lot distribution, we found that these lands had in fact been only identified and were largely unfit for housing areas, and we had to restart the process to secure new and suitable lands. It is a fact, Mr. Speaker, that the construction sector had become lethargic under their tenure. House lot allocation had become gimmicky. The bulk of their allocations were done in the lead up to the 2020 elections. It would be interesting to learn the answers for their dismal performance. Thousands of Guyanese had letters assuring them that they had been issued lands, but they were unable to get ownership, documents, or even locate the lots. In the absence of ownership document, it was impossible for an allottee to approach a bank for a mortgage. This is one of the 2 factors that resulted in low occupancy in those schemes which the Honorable Member Ferguson and her government boasted about developing. The 20 turnkey homes that they built in Experiment Region 5, half were left unoccupied when we took over in 2020. It took a supplementary budget in 2020 to fast-track development works in 21 housing areas that they had allowed to become stagnated so that allottees could have begun to build their homes. Mr. Speaker, given these facts, it appears that it is the folks on the other side of the House that desperately needed a select committee to help them manage the housing sector during their tenure. It is under their government that people found it hard to cope with the taxes they imposed on the populace. It is under their watch that the business and banking sectors struggled with huge gaps in the availability of foreign exchange, lack of access to finance, and high interest rates, as I highlighted earlier. Mr. Speaker, may I inform this House that the Ministry of Housing and Water, which falls under the Parliamentary Sectoral Committee for Economic Service, has appeared twice before that said committee, on August 9th last year and on February 14th this year. In fact, we had Valentine's Day lunch. The members of that committee, of the Economic Service Committee, which includes members of the opposition, had the opportunity on both occasions to raise questions along the issues about house lots, costs, etc. But they did not. Mr. Speaker, so I am yet to convince myself that the intention of this pseudo motion is good. We have envisaged the challenges of our people. We are providing intervention after intervention to bring relief to them. Now more than ever, you can see houses being built everywhere. The lines are as long for new applicants as they are for allocations. The construction sector received new life under this PPPC government. No amount of spin or tales of the sky is falling by this member of the House will change the achievements made by the Ministry of Housing and Water and the PPPC government in the last 3.5 years.
Excellent.
Beyond land allocation, housing construction, the ministry has implemented various community programs to enhance the lives of vulnerable population. Mr. Speaker, may I remind, we have the Community-Based Employment Stimulation Project, which has facilitated job opportunities for persons with disabilities, and residents in communities such as Leopold Street, Alboystown, North Rhineveld, Mocha, and Victoria have benefited from this program. Further, the Lane Avenue Housing Grant Program has assisted 122 families to date with essential materials to rehabilitate their homes. While, and you said, I will bring it, I'm giving you the data because we are proud to say and we are proud to show our record. The Steel and Cement Voucher Initiative has pushed home construction for some 1,197 Guyanese families in government-allocated lands across regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. You asked me for a breakdown. I have all the information. I'm not sure how much time I have, so if I have time, I'll come back to it. Disbursing, Mr. Speaker, over $300 million to date. Additionally, within the last 3 years, there has been a steady increase in the number of families who have benefited from the government's Mortgage Relief Interest Initiative. In the past 3 years, Mr. Speaker, the government has paid out more than $2.5 billion in refunds for more than 15,000 families from every income bracket with mortgage for their homes. Mr. Speaker, let me put it into context. In 2019, 2,314 mortgage interest relief were paid out. A total of $354.9 million. In 2023, last year, 5,432 beneficiaries, a disbursement of $813 million. Mr. Speaker, therefore, 134% increase in 3 years for beneficiaries and 129% increase in monetary value for mortgage interest relief.
What did APTO do with mortgage interest? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member speaking about Lane Avenue misled this House. It was not the former President Gornham.
Honorable Minister,
Yes, Mr.
you can find a better word than that.
Oh, Mr. Oh, sorry. The honorable member misquoted who was the former president at the time when the Lane Avenue houses were built. Mr. Speaker, in fact, both the East and West Rhineveldt and Lane Avenue was done under the PBP tenure under then Janet Jagan, who was the Minister of Labor, Health and Housing. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Labor, Health and Housing was the one under whose tenure the East and West Rhineveldt and Lane Avenue houses were built, which were subsequently sold the sections for $20,000.
What did the PNC do really? You mean even then they did nothing?
Mr. Speaker,
Even then they were a waste?
the honorable member went into length to provide information of persons who were affected on the home construction program. First of all, let me make this point. In our manifesto commitment to the people of Guyana, we have committed that we will deliver 10,000 house lots annually. That's what's quoted there. It is upon our new policy directive to fast-track home ownership that you have seen an extensive program for the construction of houses. So what does our record show, Mr. Speaker? And this is less than 3 years because this aspect didn't start in 2020. To date, we have contracts signed for the construction of 3,607 houses. And I'll give you the area so you'll have an idea and the category. We have completed and handed over 1,495 houses. We have therefore another 1,378 under construction and 734 that the contract has been signed and it's about to commence. Where are those houses that we're speaking about? Lenora, and this is just current contracts. We have more to be built. 322 two-bedroom flats.
Excellent.
Anna Katrina, 63 two-bedroom.
More than what they
Metamere's Arc, 25 two-bedroom. Edinburgh, 25
one area.
two-bedroom.
Wait.
Granville and Parfait, another 26. Cummings Lodge, right nearby, 327 two bedrooms elevated, 82 three-bedroom flats, bungalow, 50 three-bedroom V-roof. Those will tell you the picture. Anytime you're landing at the Ogle Strip, you can see what in 3 years the PBPC government has done in transforming an area.
But we haven't done what at once.
Great Diamond, 336 two-bedroom flat. Little Diamond, 50 two-bedroom flat. I'm giving these, Honorable Mr. Speaker, because I enjoyed having someone who is very.
Honorable Minister, let me give you some more time.
Oh,
You can get an extension of up to 15 minutes, but someone has to move it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask that the honourable member be given his time to continue with his excellent presentation. The facts for it, Annette.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you may continue.
the point to note, Mr. Speaker, here, I'm giving these information because I'm happy the honourable member has been driving in our communities. And that is very good because, you know, in opposition, you have a lot of time. It's very good. So you can provide us the information to know where we need to make correction. So in the interest of time, I'll give you some of the other larger areas. LBI, young, and this is ongoing, 91 flat young professional houses, 211 elevated young professional houses. Little Diamond, 104 three-bedroom flat houses, 75, and we have just started, Mr. Speaker, 105 young professional houses in the new Silica City, right? That the honourable member I would want for her to visit. So, Mr. Speaker, and I can go on and on. In Region 6, Williamsburg, Hampshire, Ordnance, Fortlands, 200 houses. Region 7, we have just, where's the Honourable Region 7 member? We have just signed the contract to commence the first 40 elevated, 40 houses in Bartica. In Region 9, we have the ongoing program at Letem, and likewise for Region 10. As soon as we complete with the land preparation, we will start with the additional houses for Region 10. Mr. Speaker, mention was made about a program that the APNU AFC government had. I think a Jubilee program and another where they only took 50%, a promotional program. Mr. Speaker, may I make 2 points here? Oftentimes, not often, but invariably, you see comment on social media that says somebody made an application in the APNU AFC tenure, and this PPPC government has not honored. We have honored every allocation, every 7,534 allocation that was done by the APNU. We have honored every one of them and developed the housing areas. The very subsidy program that they had a period of time, a closure for the duration of the incentive program. This minister honored that commitment, and that program ended at the end of August.
This PPP minister,
Mr. Speaker,
what that PNC minister was on.
what our housing program and what this government policy has done for a low-income earner, to allow the opportunity for everyone to acquire their own home. In simplistic terms, Mr. Speaker, a part-time worker who is earning $40,000 part-time, so it means that they can also have other employment opportunities. At a 3.2 to 3.5% rate of borrowing, will pay no more than $25,000 to $26,000 per month for acquiring a low-income house. That is what our policy has done. Mr. Speaker, also what has been mentioned, and I want to rebut quickly, is our treatment to squatting. And sometimes I think, I'm not sure who the drums are being beaten for, but we have been very clear and consistent with our policy to address squatting. In fact, when we got into office, we inherited about 21 squatting areas. We have regularized 13. Charity. Let me give you so you can go drive and check. Charity. Greenwich Park, Dikindren, Tushan Railway Line, Stewartville, Virgin Nugent Railway Line, Chatamargo, Annandale Railway Line, Bachelor's Adventure Beirut, 321 lots were regularized there. Mr. Speaker, as I speak, we are addressing Philadelphia Railway, De Willem, Virgin Nugent Tushan, Vigilance Bladenhall, Better for Acting Railway, and we will be regularizing the Mocha Arcadia, approximate 222 lots that will commence very shortly. And Mr. Speaker, my final comment or rebuttal. A lot has been mentioned about how lots are allocated, etc. And there's a consistent system and policy. But I want to leave with this question. Can the honorable member clarify, how is it that a $1.2 million lot was paid for and the approximate value surrounding that very lot? For others who paid, they paid $3 million. I leave that for the honorable member to answer.
Where is that lot? Who paid that? Where is that?
In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, Eccles.
I want to know where my...
In conclusion, Mr. Speaker,
Is that where
Where is that lot? I would like to...
I strongly believe that this motion,
is that this
the honorable member will answer. If you can even call it
is that this big man?
that, is without merit,
Let me see where
has no basis,
is it
and in fact is a waste of all of our time.
here?
We will not be deterred from the mandate of the people of Guyana, and we have been set by the people, nor will we shirk from the goals of achieving our manifesto commitment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.